Hello and welcome, everyone. This is Ask the Top Doctor Live, and it is Friday. Woo! I always have to take a deep breath when I say that because it's such a relief to get here. And thank you all so much for being here to hang out with me today on Ask the Top Doctor Live. I'm your host, Dr. Dacia P. Hastings. I'm a psychotherapist, speaker, consultant, and wellness coach, and I'm so pleased to be with you today. So, my beautiful and daughter will not be joining us again today. As we said last week, she is on assignment, and sometime in the future, she will be back. But nevertheless, the show must go on. So, if you want to find out more information about me and Ask the Talk Doctor Live, you can visit my website at TheTalkDr.com. That's www.thetalkdoctor.com. So if you're joining us for the first time, what exactly is Ask the Talk Doctor Live? Well, it is a weekly show that addresses relevant topics on health, mental health, wellness, and other life topics, things that might come up in life that generally speaking, sometimes we struggle with. We're here to support you and answer all of your questions. We are using this platform as a resource to you as we realize these are uncertain and trying times and people are struggling. And so we just want this to be a place where you can come and just hang out for 30 to 45 minutes and just be in the moment. Allow yourself to exhale. Allow yourself to get support with the questions you might have or something someone else might ask that might resonate with you. So, how do you get your questions to us? Well, there are a couple of ways. One way is to send your questions to askthetalkdrlive@gmail.com. Again, that's askthetalkdrlive@gmail.com. Or you can just quickly place your questions in the comment and chat box from wherever you might be joining, whether you're on Instagram or YouTube. Your questions will be answered as much as possible. You know, human beings use their lenses to look outward to see the world. You know, we experience the world based on our own perception and perspectives. For example, you may see a person walking down the street, and all of a sudden, you form a picture in your mind about who that person might be. That picture that you form is often called a judgment. And oftentimes, we form these pictures based on our experiences in life, our values, our backgrounds, so on and so forth. But most humans don't realize that the lenses of our eyes are not directly located in the forefront, but generally in the background of our eyes. So, what that tells me is that although our lenses are used to look outward and help us focus on things near and far, our lenses are also used for us to be introspective, something many of us are not trained to do. So we often look at the outside world and form pictures and make judgments, and we forget about ourselves. Our inner selves need to be examined from time to time. It is very important for us to do so to become introspective people because oftentimes we don't realize that the very thing that we look at in other people is inside of us as well. And sometimes we're often uncomfortable with what we see inside, so we choose to look outside instead. And we choose to criticize what we see outside. So we may say something like, I don't like her hair. I don't like her weight. I don't like her family. Why does she talk this way? Why does he walk this way? And on we go, forming pictures, making judgments, all the while not realizing that there are things inside of ourselves that we too need to examine as to why we feel that way about difference and other people that we see. So, I have a confession to make. Today, our topic and our theme for today, as we celebrate Women in History Month all month long, our topic is Own It. And yours truly, the Talk Doctor, have a confession to make. So, those of you who were with me last week, you remember that we had a guest, Judge Tara Frentress. Unfortunately, your Talk Doctor messed up, and I messed up big. So, all the while, Judge Tara joined from one link, and your Talk Doctor was on another link. Why? In my efforts to make sure that everything was prepared, I was still on the test link. Lo and behold, at the end of the show, I just felt so bad. But Judge Tara, in her wisdom, stayed on the phone with me for an hour, and we talked and we laughed, and in her wisdom spoke some things to me which also inspired this topic for today. You see, I'm owning it, but what about you? It's important for us to recognize that no matter who we are and where we go in this life, it's important for us to own our mistakes and our errors. That's how we grow. You see, even from a spiritual perspective, it tells us, in fact, it warns us not to be the people who are often ones who decide to look at other people, form judgments, chastise them for their mistakes, but we forget that the very thing exists within us. It says in Matthew 7:3-5, why do you look at the speck of sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own? A plank, if you know what that looks like, is quite huge. A sawdust is a simple speck. And oftentimes, your brothers and sisters and coworkers and friends and neighbors and relatives have just a speck of sawdust, and your plank is but this huge, but you are spending time taking out what they have in their lives, picking at them, and not realizing that you need to look within. Again, the lenses of our eyes are for us to also be introspective. So, how do you own it? I work with numerous patients on a weekly basis, and I find myself often coming back to this very same topic of owning it. You see, because of a lot of times their lack of ability to own their stuff, it gets them into a pickle oftentimes. I'm thinking about this one patient that I'm working with, and unfortunately, she has difficulty with anger. And she's never made space to admit that flaw, to pause and to listen. So, what that has done for her, essentially, the anger has grown to a level of where it's affecting and impacting her relationship, unfortunately. Why? Because she doesn't recognize that she can become a mirror for her partner as well. So, the anger that she experiences from time to time and her lack of ability to pause, stop, and listen forces her to have a knee-jerk reaction every time she's triggered by something her partner might say. And immediately she will find herself raising her voice to levels that has canceled out the whole discussion and the whole conversation. Why? Because again, she hasn't owned her stuff. So often you get into this space where you play the blame game. It is so very common for us to look at other people and say, you made me do this. You made me say this. You made me think this way. Well, if you had done this, this wouldn't happen. And it is so difficult for us to own that our very part in the matter. So why is owning it so very hard? And why is it that many of us find ourselves in situations where we're often trying to justify our wrong? You know, the ego is a very important part of our thinking, of our minds, of our brain, but it also gets us into a lot of trouble because oftentimes people might find themselves in a space where their ego is so huge. It's the biggest thing in the room that they cannot admit the very thing that they need to admit. When I'm wrong, when I made a mistake. We are all humans and we are going to make mistakes from time to time. So we have to make room for the errors that will exist so that we can then propel to the next level. And so you might be asking, well, Talk Doctor, it is hard for me to own up to my stuff. It is hard for me to admit when I make a mistake. So how do I do that? Well, I'm so glad that you asked. There's a couple of things that research tells us are important to us as we think about the mistakes and the errors in our lives and how to correct them. So I'll name a couple of them for you, and maybe you can think about how then to incorporate them in your lives. Perhaps you're dealing with a situation right now where you didn't own up to something and it has become very weighing on you, because that's one of the consequences of not owning up to your stuff. It becomes very heavy. You wear the situation and the emotion on your back, and you're carrying around this weight of guilt, wondering to yourself, oh my, is this person thinking that? Is this person going to find out that I didn't admit to this? And on it goes, creating a whole host of worry that may lead to anxiety. A few things that you can do. First and foremost, accept that mistakes happen. Mistakes are made because we are imperfect. As much as some of you might like to think that you are perfect, none of us are. Mistakes are made, and we have to take responsibility for them. So one practical way is that for you, when you become introspective, is that you can tell yourself, I have a policy on mistakes, and this is how my policy works. That if I make a mistake, I will process it, and then I will go to the person and own it. And that might be hard for you the first time. But as you continue to allow yourself to take more responsibility, watch how you begin to grow. Another part of that is to focus on you. You know, oftentimes what we find ourselves doing is we find ourselves once again looking outside of ourselves and saying, he must think this of me. She must think that of me. When the truth of the matter is, that person is doing them. They've gone on with their lives while you're in your head trying to figure out what's in their brain. Well, if you figure out how to really get inside somebody's head and read their thoughts, you can write to me and let me know, because no human in life has ever been able to read somebody's thoughts. So why do we spend so much time anticipating or thinking about what somebody else might be thinking when that is a skill set that we will never, ever develop? Instead, focus on you. Think about how the matter is making you feel, and think about what you want to do about it and how better it will make you if you just allow yourself to say, I'm human. Mistakes are made. I can own this. I can think about how then I can, through this experience, I can learn from it. Focus on you. Give yourself some grace. Forgive yourself for the things that, again, are human nature. And about repeating mistakes, because I know some of you out there feel like you've been writing the same story over and over again, and that's okay. One day you'll get to the place where there'll be a catalyst for change in your life. You see, you have to look at it from the perspective that no two mistakes are alike, even though you feel like you're in a repetitive cycle. Within each one of those mistakes exists something unique, because human beings change from day to day. They grow from day to day, even though you don't always see it with the naked eye. So try to pinpoint each time you make a mistake, what's different this time around. And don't forget to own it. And above all, remember to get proper balance in your life. A lot of times our mind goes out of control, spinning out of control because we're so hard on ourselves. Balance is so important. Take some time to sit and pause and meditate and be good to yourself and allow yourself that grace, as we said before, because better days are coming and you have to believe for that. Women, if you're listening today, as this being Women in History Month, remember that you carry a lot. You juggle a lot of things from day to day, whether in your professional lives, your personal lives, and otherwise. Give yourself some grace. Men, the pressures of life may be surmounting, pressure to perform, pressure to excel, pressure to advance. Remember, those who have gone far and beyond their own expectations had to make a lot of mistakes to get there. And speaking of, today I have with me a very exciting guest that is going to be joining us momentarily. And you heard me mention balance. You heard me mention stopping and pausing and allowing yourself some grace. Well, I am so pleased that my guest here today is a licensed clinical social worker who practices in the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia. And she's also a certified meditation and yoga instructor. And I love so much her background that out of her own pain and suffering, she decided to find a way to anchor herself in this life. Through that, her sage yoga practice, yoga and meditation practice started. And so I'm going to bring her on so we can enjoy a little bit of time just talking and dialoguing with her. She's a dynamic person. And I'm so pleased to introduce you all today to my guest, Shannon Campbell. Welcome, Shannon. Can you hear us? Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Hi, Dr. Hastings. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you really well. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today on Ask the Talk Doctor Live. So Shannon, I just gave a little bit of an introduction about you, but what I want to start off by doing, Shannon and I are going to play a little game. And the game is this. Shannon is going to tell us some fun facts about herself, but in that, there are going to be one lie. So she's going to tell us 4 facts about herself, and one of those facts is not going to be the truth. And our job is to guess which one is the lie. Okay, so you guys have the comment in the chat box. Make sure you put your thoughts in there as Shannon shares with us fun facts about Shannon.
Okay, so first fact. I have a podcast with my 11-year-old daughter. Second fact, I have 11 siblings. Third fact, I am a twin. And the last one is I have over 50 first cousins.
Wow. Okay. All of those just sound so fascinating. They sound like they can all be true. So again, she said she has a podcast with her 11-year-old daughter. She said that she has 11 siblings or 12 siblings, was it? She also said 11 siblings. She also said that she has over 50 first cousins. And then she also shared, oh my gosh, I'm running a blank on the fourth one. What was that other one?
that I'm a twin.
That she's a twin. Okay. So what do you guys think? Go ahead and put your comments in the chat. I'm going to ponder that for a little bit because I thought I knew her really well. What do you think? Is it the siblings? Is it the cousins? Is it the podcast? Or is it that she's twin? So remember, these facts are, 3 of them are true and 1 of them is going to be a lie. So what do you guys think? Write to me in the comment box. Write to me in the chat what you think it is. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, gone. I'm going to take a stab at this. And I'm going to venture to say that the facts are that she has over 50 first cousins. She has 11 siblings. And she has a podcast with her 11-year-old daughter. And the lie is that she's a twin. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if you said that was a lie, guys, then you're absolutely right. So she is not a twin. But such great facts about you, Shannon. I want to know, how did you become interested in yoga and meditation?
So I became interested in yoga and meditation. Like you said, I had a rough patch in my life where I had some struggles. I was going through a separation and divorce, and I was trying to find something to kind of ground and balance me. And one thing that Dr. Hayes did not mention is she used to be my therapist. So I was in therapy, and I just needed something else to kind of balance and ground and focus because I was really struggling. So I had done therapy yoga before, but I decided to kind of add that to as a therapeutic method, not to necessarily take the place of therapy, but to add on to the therapy. And it probably was one of the best decisions that I made.
Wonderful. That's such a great answer, because for those of you out there who are perhaps contemplating therapy or thinking about, what things are available to you, that I always stress and emphasize, particularly for those who are severely stressed or dealing with issues of anxiety and depression. I often point them in the direction of utilizing other practices like yoga and meditation, because they have such tremendous benefits. And I'm glad that you mentioned that this was not to replace, but this was a way to enhance what you were already doing. And tell us a bit more about what some of those benefits might be. For I have many people who have never gone through the process before. Even some people, when we talk about breathing exercises in therapy, don't even realize they're not breathing the right way. And so share with us your experiences with regards to the benefits of yoga and meditation.
Okay. So I'll say just in general, like you said, a lot of times we don't realize a lot of things we're doing when we're under stress. And one of those things is we do stop breathing. We don't recognize that, but we do stop breathing. So incorporation of deep breathing in yoga and being present in the moment is one of the major parts that allows you to kind of express or less release that stressful energy. And for someone like me who suffered with anxiety, it added to the stress. So with yoga, for me, suffering with anxiety is typically anxiety is when you really put a lot of emphasis on the past, and you also put emphasis on the future, which then sometimes can amp up those anxiety attacks because you think you have control of other people, about being introspective and worrying about what other people are saying or what other people are doing when you only have control of yourself. So for me, yoga, when you're practicing yoga as well as meditation, it's always being present in the moment. So you don't, or at least you don't create that space to think about your past, the things that although it's your past, it is affecting your present, but you cannot change that. So why is there so much focus on that? And then the same thing with the future, like no one's promised tomorrow. So bringing that attention to the present moment and focusing on what's happening in the here and now, because that's the only thing you really can control as it relates to you.
Yes, very well said. And I love how she talks about making a space, because really these practices, that's what it's about. It's about creating an anchor, something that really helps to ground you and to keep you present and in the moment, and not something that is going to add to your situation or add to your issues, but rather something that's going to be more beneficial to your mind, to your body, and your spirit. So I love how you talk about it being an anchor to create that space or to help you to stay in the moment. I wonder, for the purposes of demonstration, like if I'm sitting at my desk, let's say, and a feeling of anxiety comes over me, or this wave of panic, which I often hear from a lot of my patients, that they can just be sitting somewhere and all of a sudden they get this overwhelming feeling, particularly maybe for women who are listening and they have so much going on in their lives. And all of a sudden something comes in from the subconscious and comes into the conscious mind, and then they freeze. what is a way that we can use a practical, maybe a yoga position or even a breathing technique that my participants can take away with them?
So I think for when you're talking about sitting and maybe you're working and just not able to kind of go to what we call your mat, which can be a carpet or floor. One of the things that can be very beneficial, like I said, you said breathing. When we are doing actual yoga movements, because I think people who are not familiar with yoga think yoga is just, the poses they see people doing, the handstands and the, leg behind the head and those difficult things. Yoga is so much more than that. Yoga is also breathing. Yoga is also reading. Yoga is also being in the present moment. So typically, for me, when I am present in a moment, like at my desk, because I'm working from home and I'm at my desk and work is very overwhelming, I immediately stop and I take 3 deep breaths. And I always try to explain to people that we adults breathe from an area, I would say, of stress. If you look at a baby breathe, the baby breathes with their abdomen, and we don't do that type of breathing anymore, and that's deep breathing. So when I'm in a space where I'm feeling overwhelmed, I will do what is called in yoga ujjayi. And what it is you're inhaling, and when you're inhaling, you're expanding your stomach like a balloon. I mean, you're just really pushing your stomach out. And then when you exhale, you're sucking your navel back towards your back. So it's like this really deep breathing, because what you're trying to do is really move that negative energy. You're trying to make sure that you clear any blockages. And it's also very important. And if you are someone that kind of struggles with anxiety or struggles with stress, we hold stress in our neck and our shoulders, our back, and many times for women, we hold it in our hip area. So for me, that breathing, I match my breathing with my movement. So something so simple as when I'm at my desk, I inhale and I roll my shoulders up to my ears. And when I exhale, I roll my shoulders down my back. And I do that over and over again until the tension starts to release from my neck and shoulder area. So that is something that's very practical for if you're sitting. And another one is, again, holding that tension in your neck is when you inhale. And when you exhale, you can just drop your ear to one side of your shoulder, and then inhale, bringing your head back to center. And then you exhale and you drop it to the other side. I mean, that releases all the tension in your neck.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I hope you guys heard that. These are so valuable. She just gave us 2 very wonderful techniques, and I don't want to mess up of the breathing that you mentioned. So can you say it again for the purpose of those who might be taking notes or listening?
It's ujjayi breathing. And
Ujjayi.
Spelling is, yes, Ujjayi.
Okay.
But it's just a deep breathing exercise. You can put deep breathing exercise, yoga deep breathing exercise, if you want to do some research on it, and that will come up along with some other breathing techniques as well.
Yeah, I definitely love the fact that you incorporate the movement with the breathing. A lot of times when I teach, my patients how to breathe, oftentimes, we have to practice the breathing because they're so focused on learning a new way of breathing that they have not been, practicing regularly. And some would even comment, I didn't realize that I wasn't breathing properly. But the movements are so much more powerful with the deep breathing, because essentially you actually feel even more relief. And you're absolutely right about the tension areas that we tend to carry stress so often. And as we're talking about the topic of owning it, I was saying earlier, in my talk to the audience, that when we don't own it, we create so much more problems in our lives, because we're carrying all of this distress with us, the things that we know we should face, that we put in the background of our lives. And then thus it creates even more stress and tension in our lives. So I want to ask you a question, as we're talking about owning our stuff today, has anybody ever called you out on something and you've had to own it? And if so, what was that experience like for you?
So I think the experience I can think of that's really prominent is being called out by my therapist, Dr. Hastings. So, and it is definitely an uncomfortable feeling. I think to give an example, for me, as I mentioned, when I was going through my separation and divorce, it was really, the healing process was really hard. This is to be expected, but I believe that part of the reason why I was not going through the healing process was because I was not willing to be introspective. I was not willing to hold myself accountable. And I think one of the, even as a clinical social worker, and Dr. Hastings is really good at this, is not necessarily telling me what I was doing wrong, or not necessarily wrong, but what I wasn't doing that was helping my healing process, was having me figure out that there was some ownership and accountability I had to take in some things. And once I started doing that, it didn't make the healing process any easier, because it still was hard, but in some respects it did make it easier. In the process, I became a better person. And I think from that practice, even now, I am constantly, sometimes I get on my own nerves, because I'm being introspective before I kind of, make a decision, or before, I want to say something about someone, about how I don't like someone's doing one thing or another. I always take a step back and say, well, what are you doing? And what can you change? And what can you control? Because it does not matter what that other person is doing.
Absolutely. I really love that answer. And I didn't mean to call you out. Hey, folks listening. Actually, I did. That's part of the process. That's part of why you go to therapy anyway, because the very things that you're not able to see, someone can help you draw those things out. So I'm glad you pointed that out. But I think that the important takeaway from her response here was that even though the healing process was still hard for her, she recognized the flow, and the movement began when she realized that she had to take responsibility and ownership for those things. So it really is a process that is highly beneficial, even though our egos get in the way, and very many people don't necessarily want to admit that it's me. It really is me. And there's a practical saying that goes, if more than one person is telling you something, then it's really time to look at yourself. But some of us still miss the boat. Even though 10 people might have just told us something, we kind of missed the boat on that. So thank you so much for that. I wonder if you have time to stick around to take a few audience questions, if that's okay with you, Shannon, because I'd love to get your take on some of the questions that came in from the audience. Now, this is why we're here. This is the segment in Ask the Talk Doctor Live, where we respond to the questions that you have sent us. Those of you who are on, you can go ahead and put something in the chat, comment box if you are on Instagram, chat box if you're on YouTube, and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. But there were some of you who have already sent in some questions before, and we want to be able to get to those. So one of the first questions that we got here from a listener or viewer was, she says, we often hear about the strong Black woman. Do you feel that the phrase puts a lot of pressure on women to persevere despite everything in life? So you want me to go first, or you want to go first, Shannon? Okay. So when I think about this idea of pressure, I oftentimes reflect back to self. We don't often realize that it is our mindset that really adds to the pressure. Again, we focus so much on what we think other people are thinking, or what we think other people might think we should be doing. Social media is one of those big things that, where it has helped us advance so much in life, it has truly hurt our lives as well. Because the pressure to be what we think other people want us to be, or the pressure to look like the other person that we see on social media, you've got to remember that a lot of it is really orchestrated that way to only show you a small part of what I would like you to see about my life. and it's not necessarily in totality. So pressure is often self-imposed. So those of you out there who are struggling with the idea of strong Black woman, why do you own that title? If it is something that is adding the pressures to your lives, let it go. You are simply who you are on a day-to-day basis, getting through this life. And the best you can do is the best you can do. Aim to give life your best every day and then leave the rest. Pressure for to answer this question is really self-imposed when you think about it. And you have to think about how you're thinking about things. And when you let go of that form of thinking, you will realize how much better you can manage your life. Shannon, what do you think?
I agree with what you're saying, and I also think part of it is how we are socialized as Black. As we're socialized when we're very young, I think it's automatically assumed that because we are girls, females, that we are nurturers. And I think that a lot of women that hold on to that title and accept that title, because I think a lot of times it's put on Black women, and we don't necessarily accept it. We don't want it. It's not necessarily something that we have put on ourselves, but I think it also deals in with trauma as well when we become people pleasers. And then we start having these codependent relationships because we want to save everyone. So that's where you get that label of being strong. It actually, the strength that is in that strong is actually what you're doing for other people, not what you're doing for yourself. So, yeah.
Yeah, good point. And I think the true strength also lies in not just what we give to other people, but also what we can give to ourselves. That's where the true strength lies. And if you heard me earlier when I gave the tips on owning it, that's where balance comes in. You've heard me say on this show all too often that self-care is important. Part of what Shannon was sharing with us today, yoga and meditation is a big form of self-care. And in order for you to really own your stuff, you have to have that balance. You have to recognize that I have to give to myself. I have to refuel in order for me to make space to be introspective, to make space to look at my stuff, to make space to recognize when it is truly me and I've got to own it. And remembering that self-care, a part of that is also allowing yourself to be filled up so you can give to others, not what's left over, but the best of you. And so that's so important to hear you say that. So to the person who sent that question, remember, spend some time being introspective, thinking about what it means to you to be a strong Black woman. And then also then realize, does that label fit? Do I want to continue to carry that label? It doesn't take away from your true character in terms of who you are and who you aspire to be. It just means you need to give yourself some grace, and you need to think about what labels you truly want to own and what you want to exemplify on a day-to-day basis. Thanks for adding to that, Shannon. I don't see anything in the comment box yet. Go ahead and put your questions if you have them. But I do have another one, and I think this is an important one that's relevant to today. Someone sent in, with the 20 plus years of dictatorship in Russia and everything that is happening in the world, how does one remain faithful? So here's a person who finds themselves perhaps in a space of losing faith. And, throughout the entire time that the pandemic was going on, civil unrest, all of the things that has just come about in the aftermath of the pandemic, and now this war, people are really losing faith, Shannon. They're really just feeling quite hopeless. And the way I would answer this question is I would bring you back to a place of just remembering that you have two choices at times when you think about the things that you think about. We were never promised that the world would not be filled with suffering and anguish and pain and despair. But we certainly have a way for us to think about life and to think about things. And yes, these things are happening all around us, and they can ignite a lot of fear. They can ignite a lot of what's the point? but those are hurtful thoughts. They're not helpful thoughts. So the important thing here, keeping the faith and having hope is a helpful way of allowing you to then fuel more helpful thoughts. We can hope for a better tomorrow. Even if we can't think about what the world is doing, we can hope for a better way of showing up in life, as opposed to allowing the things of the world to succumb us. Because guess what? You have to know the difference between the things that you have control of and the things that you do not have control of. And that's the space in which you lose your faith, when you try so hard to control the uncontrollables. What do you think, Shannon?
You took the words out of my mouth. I'm going to talk about, focusing on things that you have control of, because again, when we don't do that, when we're trying to focus on, what's going to happen today or what is going to happen in a month because of the crises that are going on around us, then we lose focus of things that we can control. So then that starts to affect our day to day. And I think when you're talking about faith and people wanting to hold on to that, although for them in that moment they can't, it's hard to grasp, is focusing on the things that you can control and ramping up the things that, when things are going well, that builds up your faith. Is loving other people, doing for other people, and all those things that when times are good, that helps the foundation or keeps your faith strong. Those are the same things that help when you are questioning things. So also, again, it's only so much we can control. So that's focusing on the things that we can control and doing our best, because it's easier said than done. Yeah. Not focusing on the things that are out of our hands.
Absolutely. I love that answer so much. Thank you for adding to that. So the person who sent that in, I hope that this is helpful. I hope that it resonated with you in terms of, what you can do to keep the faith. Like Shannon was also expressing, is that it's hard to, have faith because it's not something you can grasp. It's not a tangible thing. But if you build up your resilience and you build up that very thing within you to recognize that I can't control what's going on around me, but I can control how I show up. I can control how I see it from my lenses. There goes that word again, where we talk about, spending time with you and recognizing that you have to fuel yourself with things for such a time as this that's going to keep you faithful and going in spite of everything that is here now and is yet to come. So I know that you have to go, Shannon, and I'm recognizing that you spent so much time with us. I really, really appreciate you being here today, your wisdom, the journey that you've been on. Please tell us, if we're interested in, becoming a yogi with your studio, how can people find you? Where can they, participate in yoga and meditation with you?
So there are a couple of ways. One way, if you're in the Maryland area, I do practice and teach at Spiritual Essence Yoga, which is in Upper Marlboro. So I don't even have the address ready, but Upper Marlboro, Maryland, Spiritual Essence Yoga off of Brown Station Road. And also, I am getting back into offering private lessons. As you all can imagine, that wasn't the case in the past 2 years. So I can be reached on my email. And I don't know, can I put it in the comments?
Yeah, you can certainly, if you're on YouTube or Instagram, you can put it in the comments for people to grab there. And I'll also say it so people who are jotting down notes. So she has 2 ways. She's located in the Maryland area. If you want to practice yoga with her, she's going to share with us. Do you have a website that you want people to go to, or would you like them directly if they are interested in practicing?
Contact directly.
Okay. And she put it in the comment. And if you just want to tell me, I can just say it for people as well.
Sure. So it's kind of long. So there's 2. There's Sage Conversations.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sage Conversations Podcast at gmail.com.
Okay. Sage Conversations Podcast at gmail.com.
Yes. And then there's another way. Just want to make sure I give the correct address. Obviously I'm not prepared.
Oh, you're fine.
So it's Sage Yoga, W as in wellness, C as in center, @gmail.com.
Okay, so that's easy to remember. Sage Yoga WC @gmail.com. All right, so you got that? Okay, so this is how you would find my guest today. If you want to practice yoga and meditation from her, you see that there are these are very valuable things that really helps us to anchor. And again, it's so hard for us sometimes to move the ego out of the way and own our stuffs. So some of the ways to do so is to practice things like breathing and yoga and meditation to give you space in your mind to really be more introspective. So Shannon, I want to thank you so very much for coming on, being transparent, sharing with us the things that can really benefit a lot of people out there. You were a wonderful guest. Thank you so much. I would love to have you back on again in the future, but I know you have to run. So thanks for being here and many blessings to you and your yoga practice.
Thanks for having me and thanks for always supporting me, Dr. Hastings.
My pleasure. Take care. All right. Bye now. So I'm going to go ahead and truly give us a little bit of an opportunity where we can wrap this up today. I don't see anything in the comment or the chat boxes yet, but remember, you can always send us your questions if maybe you don't feel comfortable putting it in the live chat or in the comment box, and that's completely okay. So we have a dedicated space where your questions can come in at TheTalkDr @gmail.com. And who knows, maybe your question might air here on the show. Again, I'd like to say thank you to Shannon McGee, certified social worker and certified meditation and yoga instructor and social worker, for being here today and sharing all of her wonderful insights with us. As we close, often we hear of celebrities or political powers that be making broad statements about a person, people, or situations, and then backpedaling when they're called out on this statement. Perhaps you have found yourself in a situation where you've been called out before. I'm always amused at the endless, "That's not what I meant to say," or "I take that back," after they've made a mistake. But very rarely do you hear a genuine, "I messed up and I'm sorry." Even those of you who have children, it is very important for us to teach them how to own their stuff by the adults in their lives knowing when to say, "I messed up and I'm sorry." It's one of those experiences that in that moment teaches that child or children how then to own their mistakes. Because if the giant adults in my life can say, "I messed up," then I can do so too. So you become a mirror for them. It almost seems like the higher we go in life, or the higher that we are, the less likely it is that we want to admit that we messed up. The truth is, admitting you have messed up is hard for many people, and maybe even you. Somehow it puts most people in a space that there must be something wrong with me, or somehow I have failed. That is why it's so hard for you to own that you have faults, you have flaws, and yes, you will mess up from time to time. The truth is, we are all flawed because we are imperfect beings. However, it is important for us to know when to say, "I'm wrong," and own it. Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes." I love that so much because when I hear the word freedom, it gives me permission to know that my humanness is not always going to walk the straight and narrow, although I may aspire to do so. In my humanness, there's going to be times when I might take the crooked path and have to be kind of lured back or even ushered back on the straight path. I'm reminded of a time during my younger self, dear younger me, when I was leading a team of former managers and having the hardest time getting the team to a place where they develop camaraderie and the ability to work together to get the job done. I would say in my perseverance, I developed a pretty high performing team despite the odds. A few years into my leadership with this team, I was publicly giving them praise at an all staff meeting. I proudly called each one of them out for something they were doing well in the organization. Unfortunately, one of my team members took what was supposed to be a compliment as an insult. And frankly, my compliment to her was met with disdain. To my surprise, when I received an email sent to the entire organization about how I had insulted her and embarrassed her, my first reaction was shock. Here I was thinking I was doing something good, but apparently this employee felt otherwise. She had gone to HR to launch a complaint against me, and something that in all my years working for the company, I had never had happen to me. She demanded that the issue warranted a public apology, and she would let the whole thing go. So after I had a chance to collect myself, dear younger me, and get all the thoughts out of my head about how this would look to my team, to my colleagues, and to the entire organization, I decided I needed to do the right thing, to admit my fault. I apologized to the employee individually, and then I drafted an email to the entire organization with a public apology. I admitted that my intentions were to compliment my team, but since she found my words offensive, that was not acceptable, and I apologized. After sending the email, I waited, and to my surprise, nothing from anyone in the organization. No one even talked about it ever. Messing up is not such a bad thing. It reminds us each day that we are human, and humans are allowed a few mistakes over their lifetime, and that's okay. Now, that reminds me that I need to go off and hug my children and apologize to them for fussing at them when they mess up. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I am so pleased that you chose to gift yourself this time. Again, to my guest, Shannon McGee, thank you so much. Send us your questions to askthetalkdrlive@gmail.com. If you're looking for a way to process things in your life, check us out at www.thetalkdr.com, and we'll be happy to help you with counseling, coaching, courses, and whatever support you might be needing. Again, thank you for being here, and we will see you next week on Ask the Talk Doctor Live. Bye now. Thank you for being here.